I always say International House of Pancakes. It's too many words. People just have to say IHOP because they
Well,
can't.
and that's why they changed the name. You are a huge influencer on that.
Thank you.
Hey,
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Siblings. It Ain't Easy is a real estate podcast that just ain't typical. Eric, you used ain't a lot in writing this intro, didn't you? I'm Donna, and this is Eric, and we are the Real Siblings. We are both professional realtors with Keller Williams, and for your reference, if it matters, he's Gen X, and I'm a boomer. The podcast blends lifestyle together with real estate as we work to communicate, educate, connect. Dang, someday I'm going to be perfect at this, Eric. Hi. While the topics vary and our conversations go in many directions, we work to provide our listeners with insights into our industry, better equipping them for your next real estate. I can't even speak to that. Real estate transaction. Good thing I'm not a perfectionist. And we are not starting over. I don't even care. So, Eric, maybe I can blame it on the dry heat. And it's
there you go, dry heat.
My brain is dried up or something. Oh, my Lord. So you're going to tell our listeners a little bit more about what we're going to talk about today. For those of you that are watching this, Eric has got this screen with this super tall old building behind him. What's the building, Eric?
All right, so that is a skyscraper at 115 East Travis Street in downtown San Antonio. It is known as the Milam Building. It was built in 1928. And it kind of leads us to where we're talking today because in 2014 it was added to the Registry of Historic Places nationally. And you're going, it's a skyscraper. Well, it's a skyscraper that was the first skyscraper designed and built with indoor air conditioning in the United States. So 1928, 21 stories, 3 million cubic feet, 247,000 plus square foot of floor space, and it was the first designed to have air conditioning. It was designed, let me make sure I've got all of these details right, and I've mixed things up, so now I've got to find it. George Willis was the architect, engineered by M.L. Diver and constructed by L.T. Wright and Company. And the reason that's important is because these guys were innovators. They were doing something that had never been done before, between the ductwork, between the capacity, and figuring all of that out and going, let's put 3 million cubic square feet in the middle of South Texas and air condition it.
So is the building still being used, I assume?
The building is still being used. It's actually currently owned by a business called Western Urban, which is a big renovator developer here in downtown San Antonio.
Okay.
They've been responsible for several different historic property makeovers. This one's kind of in the works as to what it's going to be. Is it going to be a combination mixed use office space, turn top floors into condos?
Yeah.
It's in development.
And it would be really interesting to know like what they have had to do with and to the air conditioning through the years. Because for those of us that know that we didn't have air conditioning, our old house in Lindsey, we had that window one on the front porch, right, that faced the church direction.
On Maple Street side of the house.
Yeah, and would drip water into a bucket or something on the porch.
It wasn't just a bucket, it was a Schwann's bucket. Come on now. We make more use of those 2.5 gallon Schwann buckets than I can talk about repurposing, reusing, and turning trash into treasures.
Every piece of trash was a treasure for Dad. That's funny. Which
references back to our Talking Trash episode, right?
There you go. So, you and I were talking a little bit about, timing related to things. And like when I first came here to the desert and to college and everything, and when Gil and I were dating, that there was no air conditioning in the cars. And my dorm didn't have air conditioning, Eric. We had sleeping porches at the back, which is where we all slept, which was convenient, but all the rooms, we didn't have air conditioning.
Now wait, sleeping porches, kind of like what you would have as a summer porch here in the South?
Yeah.
With houses that would build a porch, screened-in area above?
Well, it wasn't screened in, but the shape of the building was a hacienda. So at the back on all three levels were only the sleeping areas. So unlike a typical dorm room where you would sleep in your room, we didn't do that. We hung out in our rooms, which was kind of nice because it meant if you had a roommate that was a late night person, but I worked in the bakery, I went to bed early, right? I could go to that sleeping porch. I had the air conditioner, and all that took place in that room was sleeping. It was comfortable. I shouldn't say that. All that took place in that room was sleeping.
No, but it really, it's interesting. Can you imagine nowadays that a college student, with what we pay for tuition, that it would be acceptable
to be sharing,
to share an open sleeping area, which I'm assuming you had your own bed. It's not like you had a cot that you had to find someplace new every night.
No. We had bunk beds, but that's interesting because I don't remember exactly where I slept. But what I do remember is that because I'm a light sleeper, I would get up early because I would work in the bakery. But man, if somebody else, one of my neighbors was a runner, she would run the mall in the morning. And if she didn't hear her alarm, everybody heard the alarm, right? So that would have been the not good piece of sharing with however many, 30, 40.
Yeah, so you had a place to plug in clocks. Was it a digital clock that you would have had someone hitting a snooze alarm that even if it went off, they did that?
Yeah, yep. Old school air conditioning, old school clocks. It was the 1970s.
I don't think I ever knew that. I really, that's another one of those little tidbits. So we're talking about migrations, folks, and we talked migrations in episode 23, but now we're not talking about leaving the hot climate and returning to a feeder city northern climate. We're talking about the fact that we both live in hot climates. Average daily temperatures right now in San Antonio have gotten up to 88, 90 degrees. We're running 60 to near 100% humidity. And during that time frame, you don't do a whole lot during the day. If you don't have to, you stay inside.
And I think yesterday I don't know if we broke 100. My phone said 99, but it was our first day, which for us to get to June and not have hit 100 yet is pretty fascinating. So, yeah. Eric, you and I were talking, as we always do beforehand, and we were talking about, I call them swamp coolers, evaporative cooling versus air conditioning. Have you come across swamp coolers there, or is it too humid?
No, we are too humid. Swamp coolers are not a good option here. Even though we're nautical miles, we're well over 100 miles from the coast, we still get enough coastal humidity coming in from the Gulf Coast and from across the Pacific. It comes across the Baja Peninsula, and the same thing that the winds shift a little bit and bring you monsoons. Yep. If it blows a little bit more west than northwest, it comes across to us and we get Pacific moisture. So we are officially a semi-arid climate.
And you don't really have a monsoon season like
nowhere near like what you guys have.
Yeah. What I do remember from all the years that you've lived there is that I've seen the creeks with no water and practically flooded. Like I remember seeing you showing me a boat dock like that was dry.
I've been showing a couple of listings out at the lake that's close to us, Medina Lake, and I think it would be a metal detector's paradise right now. The lake is now, with what the recent rain we've had, is probably somewhere around 80% empty.
Oh, wow.
So 20% full. So that means there's a lot of deep channels where people have lost rings, lost necklaces, lost other stuff that's now fully exposed. Go down there with a metal detector and start digging in.
Wow. What an interesting thought. You're right, because people lose things like that all the time. Wow.
Earrings, necklaces. Just think how much is down there in these open channels now that are available.
Real antiquity. You don't know, right?
Wow. That's it. Before we continue on, and we're talking air conditioning today. And I had mentioned that I ran across one of those random social media posts.
Oh, yeah.
Where someone just kind of puts it out there and goes, answer this question. And the world changed when? ... And people filled it in. And you can imagine across generations, you were getting the telephone.
Right.
When we had created airplanes, when we went to the moon, when we got rockets, it's computers. But the one that always stuck out with me was this lady who answered and said, the world changed when we added air conditioners in the home. And she went on in that article to talk about the fact that up until that point, in the cooler parts of the evening, people would go sit on their porches. They would take a walk in the evening. They would see their neighbors. They would communicate with their neighbors. They might have their neighbors over, have a sweet tea, a lemonade, or something like that. As soon as we had air conditioners, nobody came outside anymore. And for her, culturally, that was a huge switch because you know your neighbors now, but do you know your neighbors? Because even if you're in a neighborhood where you only have 10 foot between your houses,
right?
You wave to them when they may be out checking the mail. But for the most part, most of us don't visit with neighbors like we used to.
Yeah.
And is that air conditioning's fault?
Well, it's interesting again, as we reflect back to our childhood. So air conditioning or not, it's still a small town. People were still out. We know that people walked, rode, and it wasn't like there was 100 miles of options. It was like a mile around the loop around town or something.
Okay, so thinking Lindsey, I'm thinking the Rogers, Carl and Eileen, would be on their bike. Who else rode with them? There was a biking gang that ran.
I don't remember a biking gang.
Lindsey, that point where they had the flags on their bikes and they'd go walking. I wanted to say, gosh, aside from Rogers, who else was in that list? I'm not remembering.
I don't know, but I do remember that Nick Sarl was a runner and that he was one of the few people that was exercising and running before everybody was exercising.
Before everybody else was. I also think sure was.
That the small town just lends itself to that. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in our next episode, with some people from our hometown as they approach a special event. But for here, what I notice is like we go all summer and we hardly see each other. And partly I have mostly older neighbors, but the one couple who has, I think Stanley's 3 now, a 3-year-old, they help with my mail. He loves getting things out of the freezer.
Sorry, I got to interrupt. That just sounds funny. How many kids that are 3-year-old today are named Stanley? That's got to be a family name, right?
It is. It's unusual. And this bright storyteller who knows that I have mini ice cream cones in my freezer because they bring my mail and stuff like that. But, they'll go to pools, they'll go do activities, but we leave in the summer. People leave here because of the temperature. And if not, what's interesting is it a good time to talk about evaporative coolers, Eric? Is this? I
was just going to say, so talk about that because you've got dry heat behind you, right? Yeah. You've got your skeleton, and I know gift shops. You get into Arizona and you see the little shot glasses or the coffee cups, and it's like, it's a dry heat, and there's some sort of bones in the bottom of the.
Yeah, and it's a big joke about it. But what you just said about 60% humidity is something else. So I was telling you that June is our hottest month typically. A lot of people think July, August. Well, that is when we do get monsoon rains and it cools down. But when I first moved here and when we started selling houses, people would talk about these swamp coolers, and that's kind of a nickname for an evaporative cooler. It only really works well in dry climates. And when I was pulling up information today, they were talking about the Coachella Valley in California, which only averages 6 inches of rainfall a year. So, Tucson doesn't always do much more than that. Yes. The way that the evaporative coolers work is that they take hot air and it pushes the dry air over water that's supplied with a pump. You have to keep those pads clean and you have to, keep the water going. It evaporates, it cools the air, and then they send it into the house. And it can change your temperature from 5 degrees to 40 degrees. As soon as we start hitting more humidity, it's not as practical. If it's going to monsoon rain out night, you don't care if you're putting moisture into your air. And now if you were to go Google evaporative coolers, you would get the tiny little ones. Like instead of a dehumidifier, you'd have a humidifier, whatever. You'd be putting moisture in your air. And I have a little one in my bedroom, for in there for sleeping. When you first started, they were talking, I was reading about a commercial building. So thinking about the building behind you, if that had evaporative cooling, they would tell you originally to crack the windows to let some of the hot air out, right? Just like when you get in your car, maybe when you first turn your air conditioner on or something. And financially, it saves like 50% on installation and about 75% on energy costs. So those people.
But what did you say about that? You're going, when we talked before this, there's that fact. You're saving energy and it's lower cost, but
none of the new builders are offering to put evaporative cooling into their homes.
Okay, so you just said not offering. There's one thing about this is what we're building for the community, but do they not even offer it as an option if somebody wants to?
Until we started talking about this, I don't know, but I don't think so. The old homes here had lower ceilings, right? And so that cooling was cooling a smaller space. Now we have 2 stories, vaulted ceilings, bigger homes. We all live in bigger spaces. And a lot of those will have 2 air conditioners. I have one under contract right now for an upstairs and a downstairs air conditioner. I don't even think it's an option. And I'm selling one. It's under contract from 1978, which is the age of the place I live in.
Right.
And it had both an air conditioner and the evaporative cooler, but my friend never used it. My friend never used the E-Vap. So one of the things that happens is, like everything, you have to do maintenance or it rusts, right? Because you have the moisture and you have the pads.
Okay, so terminology. We started with swamp coolers, evaporative cooler, and then another slang term would be an E-Vap.
Well, that's just me saying evaporative cooling.
Okay. I didn't know if that was actually something that depended on where you're at in language, that may be another way they refer to it, because we've come across other terms as we've done this where an office does exactly the same thing but has different names for it. A pier and frame foundation versus a slab, and then we talk post-tensioning versus rebar. So there's different things, and I just...
No, that's just me just shortening it like we do with, I always say International House of Pancakes. It's too many words. People just have to say IHOP because they can't.
Well, and that's why they changed the name. You are a huge influencer on that.
Thank you.
Kentucky Fried Chicken got to be too long too, so we have to do just KFC.
Yeah, so we have all these shortened words. And my place, even though it was just minus 79, the E-Vap was already gone. The evaporative cooler was already gone when I moved in. And it's just air conditioning. Now, I live in a townhouse, so I am connected on 2 sides, which keeps my bill a little lower anyway. And by the way, now I'm a weather wimp and I don't take it down to a super cold temperature. I bet I'm sure your house is way colder than mine because you're so much more hot-blooded than I am.
Well, during the summer, when you're over 90 degrees and approaching 100 degrees, it is reasonable to keep the inside of your house at around 78 because it still feels 20 degrees cooler and drier. So you're not only have the heat in San Antonio, but you have the heat and you have the humidity. So if you come in from being in a hot, moist heat into a cooler, drier heat, it's substantially different. Now at night, we take it down to have a cooler temperature to sleep. But thankful for programmable thermostats. I start stepping it down at 6 o'clock at night during the summer. At 9 o'clock is where it starts going towards the maximum. So I don't even try to overload the system and say, we're going to go from 78 and drop that temperature all in 30 minutes. I step it down to help make the power consumption a little more reasonable.
So it's interesting that you say 78 because that's what mine's set at right now. I will keep mine 77, 78, or 79. If I walk out of the house, I'll put it at 79 because I know when I come back, it's still going to feel cool compared to
going to feel cool.
Then if I'm working, I might have it at 77, but it's amazing the difference in how much more the air conditioner works for those 1 or 2 degrees compared to, but 78 is kind of my go-to. And when the kids are here, they want it at like 72 and the ceiling fans and, the whole shebang. And I just don't do that. And I have solar, as I mentioned before. So there's this combo of, what I'm going to do with it, how much I'm going to pay, what do I want to pay, how hard.
You had mentioned that you and a friend were out at a restaurant.
Yep.
Recently. And what did you say about that?
Yeah. So my friend Beth and I went out to dinner the other night and we sat outside on a patio at 5:30, which in theory, super hot, the time of day, because 3 or 4 p.m. is usually the hottest. We were south, kind of on the southeast side, but it had a reasonably good covering and it was 91 degrees out, but we were in the shade and they had misters and the misters were not blowing constantly. The misters were coming on periodically. Is that one of your dogs?
Yes. The husky mix is in and needs to talk to everybody. Thank you, Ruby.
we were totally comfortable in 91 degrees outside at 5:30 in the evening. And when I got there, I thought certainly I would want to be indoors, but then we take sweaters with us because it's going to be air conditioned to the max and freezing. So yeah.
But I'm talking about humidity, and you're talking about adding moisture to the air to make it feel cooler.
Exactly.
Here it's like, oh, it's 80 degrees, but the humidity's here, so it's going to feel like it's 87.
Yeah.
Moisture here raises the temperature, and you're using it to cool down.
Yeah. Yep. Because you want to get a little sprinkle on you.
And then are most of the patios flexible space so that during this time of year you have cover, and during the winter months you can roll that back and get a little bit more direct sun?
Yeah, sometimes it depends, of course, whether it's north, south, east, or west, as the sun is going. But some of them have umbrellas. Some of them have the rollout shades. Some of them have a metal perimeter that have the misters attached that then you can adjust those other things. But yeah, and honestly, when I moved here, that was one of the things that I remember loving when I first moved here, that there was so much outdoor dining for so much of the year. And then I am happy to leave for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in the middle of the summer.
During the middle of the summer, I can hit the road too. Yeah, I remember one of the first times I visited when Stefan moved out to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And we were going to meet Adam somewhere for pizza, and the roads were so hot, I can remember feeling the heat through the floorboards, because that particular day we were close to 117 degrees.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I didn't want to get out of the car. It's like, look, I can feel it through the floorboards, through my shoes, onto my feet, that there is heat radiating up. How close can I possibly park to avoid that kind of heat?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that that Adam and Caleb are in the Denver area, because, Denver does get hot, but they certainly have more variations in the temperature.
Sure.
And when I first moved here, Eric, my friends and I would sit outside in the sun in July. Yeah, that lasted for a couple of years. I remember with a couple of other Midwesterners, and my clients that come from Norway, they'll be here the end of June and into July because they've been cold the whole year and they don't care.
And they're coming to warm up.
Yeah.
So aside from the evaporative coolers and standard, what we'll consider HVAC, heat pumps?
Yeah, a lot of them are now. The new ones going in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, we switched. Again, more detailed conversations we have to have. Touch on one of these subjects, we realize, oh my gosh, there's really so much more we could talk about. Mm-hmm. We have a geothermal air conditioner system.
Okay.
And understanding the difference between a 13 SEER and a 16 SEER air conditioner. And you and I both know that there has been a change in Freon.
Yep.
And you've got, I'll say, panic almost. If
About
you've got
R22.
an older system and it's like, oh, you're not going to be able to get that Freon.
Yeah.
And then you talk to my air conditioning guys that I talk to, it's like, look, we laid up so much extra Freon.
Yeah.
We go 10 years.
And still have R22.
And still be okay. And guess what? Your air conditioner is going to need replacing sometime in that 10 years because it's already 5 years old. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But we do know it's more expensive. You get a small pinhole leak in your air conditioning. You got to recharge Freon, and it's $80 a gallon plus the labor, plus to fix the leak and everything else. And it's like, how much did you have to add? How did that end up being $350?
Oh, I just had in my condo, the air conditioner quit working and someone was there. I don't know if I had told you that. It was for 2 nights, or they were going to be there 5 nights. And after 2 nights, they moved to another condo. I refunded them some money, and I blocked off the dates and sent some people over and sent an air conditioning guy over. And it was a simple lug nut. Everything was frozen. The pipes, the lines were frozen. Everything.
Right. You've got that freezing. It's like, how can it be frozen when?
Right. So when we turned it off, the tech got there. It was 91 degrees inside the condo. And it turns out it was a nut. It was a nut that wasn't tight, that just made something fall, that meant the air wasn't, thank heavens, right? Thank heavens it didn't mean I needed a whole new system.
Right.
But we had that conversation because it's older, it's small, it's almost like the size you would have like in an RV because it's a tiny little condo, right? And they fixed it, but I keep a home warranty knowing full well that the time's going to come when I have to replace that, because I think it's, I don't know, 17 years old, something like that. So
right. Right.
Pushing
and then you've got more common now, especially in smaller units, you're going to the ductless systems.
Yeah.
And I bet you probably have some people who are doing some renovations on older houses
Yep.
rather than try to install ductwork and everything else, they're putting in one, maybe two
Mini split. Yeah.
referred to as mini split, but is also a ductless air conditioner system.
Yeah. Some of the carports that were converted to rooms that they never, so I have
that's the alternative.
Yeah, young couple that have done that, and it's easier. You're right. It's easier than lowering the ceiling because the carports never had space, where it never had a ceiling. And Steve has one in his sunroom. That's what they're.
So where we grew up with window units, which there are still plenty of houses in San Antonio you can drive around and you can see the window units.
Right.
The problem with window units you brought up when you mentioned the air conditioner we had at the house in Lindsey, the 1868 brick house. We had one air conditioner. It was in one window and it sat over top of a porch. So it was partially protected from the element. It's not like it was hanging out. Right. But we had a bucket because every single air conditioner will create condensation. You can't go through that temperature exchange without creating some sort of moisture.
Right.
The unfortunate problem we have in San Antonio is that means then if the unit isn't perfectly balanced, that moisture goes into the wall and it soaks insulation and it soaks wood and it destroys the sill and it allows wood destroying insects, termites, crazy ants, carpenter ants to go, hey, there's a nice, moist, scrumptious environment here. Let's hit it. And you're tearing out the whole wall. Yeah. Because of what we did with an air conditioner. And we can understand why we want the air conditioner. But we talked about that. Like everything, one decision you make
affects so many things.
Has that ripple effect. And it's like, how many other things does it affect?
We didn't even talk about the cost of putting a new one in. So as a single woman who doesn't know anything about anything related to electric or plumbing or air conditioning, we had a father that did a lot of stuff. Gil did a lot of stuff. I don't know how to do any of the stuff, right? So I keep a home warranty, and I ended up having to get a new air conditioner a few years ago. And it was, and of course they go out when it's 110 degrees. That's when they quit working, right?
Never during the winter.
It was the second time that something had happened. The first time they replaced the compressor. The second time I'm like, I don't want another compressor because every year I don't want to have this happen. And I had been paid about $550 a month because or a year. I continue to get the realtor discount, which isn't $550 anymore. And so I probably bought myself a new air conditioner over the years that I had lived here, but I didn't have to come up with $6,000 or $10,000, all at once. I know somebody that just put one in, it was $16,000. And I find myself wondering, is what you're going to save on your bill and the efficiency, how long does it take to make up for that? I don't know.
So when we put in our geothermal system, even though it was, by the time we drilled and did everything that goes along with the geothermal. So in this case, with the geothermal, for anybody who doesn't know, you use the temperature of the ground as a heat exchange. Yeah. That means, depending on where you're at, you need to be able to drill holes into your ground to run tube that circulates water that is either pumped through one direction to take the heat out or reversed and draw the heat into the house during the winter.
Got it.
We have 5 holes. Each hole is 250 feet deep. Those had to be installed. The unit for the water furnace, which is another terminology for it.
Wow.
All totaled was almost $24,000.
Holy crap.
However, when I compared the numbers to any other standard air conditioning system, for the higher, more efficient, more productive, I could never get the lines to intersect. Where I said, here's how much the system cost, and here's how much I'm going to save. Those never came together.
Oh, wow.
Across the life of the system. So it was never going to pay for itself, even though it was supposedly the most efficient system. But I'm going, why do I want to spend $18,000 that's never going to pay for itself, where I could look at the geothermal and make the adjustment? The first months we had the geothermal installed, we lowered our air conditioning for a home that's entirely electric from between $75 to $100 a month by going to the geothermal over a traditional air conditioner. So it was more than worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it's getting close to time to wrap this up, but I forgot to say at the beginning, this is our 25th episode. Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Year 2.
Year 2. Midway through season 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens to be Eric's and my birth month. So that's part of the reason that we have these come out on the 16th and the 28th of the month. This one is our 16th one, right? This is what we're doing for your.
No, this will be the episode that'll come out on the 16th, episode 25.
So happy
and
birthday
we
to
also
you.
need to mention, because that will be coming out right about Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to everybody who's a listener and
There you go.
is part of our audience. And if you're not, you're brand new. Happy Father's Day if that applies to you.
Yeah.
And
So
before I close this down, or as I close this down, I'm gonna. San Antonio really loves air conditioning. So not only the Milam building that's behind me, which was the first commercial designed air conditioned building in the United States, we're also home to the Friedrich Company, which goes all the way back to 1883 Furniture Company. But the guy was a designer and innovator, and he became, by 1950, the company was one of the world's largest refrigeration companies globally. 2 years later, 1952, they rolled the first 500 of their, what do they call it? Floating air window units. And they became one of the top producers and still are one of the big innovators in the industry in home air conditioning systems.
So go with San Antonio. Yeah.
So go San Antonio. There we go. We want to close this one down. Thank everyone for listening and joining us. We've called How Life in the Small Village of Lindsey, and what we grew up with in heat and humidity in Ohio and how that impacted us and what we think and perceive here in Texas and in Arizona. It wasn't just the house or just the lifestyle, but a wonderful blend of the two. As we call it a day, please keep in mind that our goal is to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners. We are both realtors with Keller Williams, and we are here to help you find the perfect property for your family to call home and create your own lasting memories as you build your own wonderful life. If you're in San Antonio or South Central Texas, I'm available to assist you while Donna is in Tucson, Arizona. If you're across the United States or around the world, we are both part of extensive networks of professional real estate advisors. We would be happy to connect you with an amazing realtor. Remember, it may be simple, it ain't always easy, and until next time, I'm Eric.
And I'm Donna.
And we are Real Siblings.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Annabelle, and I want to thank you for investing your valuable time in listening to Real Sibling. It Ain't Easy. I hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast with my Grandpa Eric and Aunt Grandma. Please take the time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes Grandpa put together with their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and website. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.